Hello, my name is Dr. Diwan S. Raja. Today I will discuss about the blood supply of the brain. The brain gets its blood supply from circle of Willis. You know that. Circle of Willis is a structure that is present at the base of the brain, and it is almost like a heptagon. If we draw a heptagon, so it looks like a heptagon. So we have the anterior cerebral artery, we have the middle cerebral artery, we have the posterior cerebral artery, we have the basilar artery, and basilar artery is formed by the union of two vertebral arteries. Okay, so we'll get this arterial anastomosis at the base of the brain in the interpeduncular fossa, in the subarachnoid space, and our main contributors are the internal carotid artery. Okay, that is the internal carotid artery. Internal carotid artery has branches like that of the anterior cerebral artery, anterior cerebral artery, and this is the middle cerebral artery, middle cerebral artery. Okay, we got that, and we have contribution by two vertebral arteries. Okay, these are the vertebral artery on one side, and two vertebral artery unite to form the basilar artery. Basilar artery will be divided into posterior cerebral artery, posterior cerebral artery. Okay, we got that. Another posterior cerebral artery. So this is the circle of Willis. Circle of Willis, this is very important, and circle of Willis provide blood supply to the brain. Circle of Willis. Okay, so we'll go from here, from circle of Willis. We have the anterior cerebral artery here, anterior cerebral artery, anterior communicating artery. We have the posterior communicating artery connecting the internal carotid artery to the posterior cerebral artery. Okay, so we got the circle of Willis, and then we'll go to the blood supply of the brain and brain stem. Okay, so if you go there, okay, so here we got that this is the superolateral surface of the brain. This is the medial surface of the brain, inferior surface of the brain. Okay, this is the superolateral surface. Superolateral surface is getting blood supply from the middle cerebral artery, anterior cerebral artery, and posterior cerebral artery. Okay, if you go there, so the superolateral surface of the brain, the superolateral surface of the brain is supplied by we go one by one. We have the anterior cerebral artery. We know that anterior cerebral artery is a branch of internal carotid artery. Okay, this is a branch of internal carotid artery. Okay, so anterior cerebral artery supplies which part of the superlateral surface along the superomedial margin here, and we have the around 2 fingers from anterior to posterior up to parieto-occipital sulcus. Here we get the parieto-occipital sulcus. Okay, here is the parieto-occipital sulcus. So this area, on the superlateral surface, this area is supplied by the anterior cerebral artery. This is the anterior cerebral artery. This area is the anterior cerebral artery here, and this part on the superlateral surface is supplied by the middle cerebral artery. Middle cerebral artery is also a branch of the internal carotid artery we have seen in the circle of Willis. So we get the middle cerebral artery. That is also a branch of internal carotid artery. Internal carotid artery. Okay, so this area is supplied by this is the anterior cerebral artery. This part is supplied by the middle cerebral artery. Okay, it is below the area supplied by the anterior cerebral artery. It does not include the occipital lobe. This is the occipital lobe of the brain. Occipital lobe, that is supplied by the posterior cerebral artery, not by middle cerebral artery. Middle cerebral artery supplies this part of the superlateral surface, like this part, the superlateral surface. Okay, and it includes many areas, like the motor speech area of Broca. It includes the auditory area. It also includes the Wernicke speech area here. Okay, so it also includes the lower part of the precentral gyrus and the lower part of the postcentral gyrus. Okay, so we got the area supplied by middle cerebral artery. Then we go to this area, these green dots. This is occipital lobe. So that is the posterior cerebral artery. Posterior cerebral artery. Posterior cerebral artery is a branch of basilar artery. We have seen in our circle of Willis, 2 vertebral artery unite together just in the lower part of the pons. Then at the upper part of the pons on the basilar sulcus, it split into 2 posterior cerebral artery. So posterior cerebral artery is a branch of, we have 2 posterior cerebral artery, we have 2 anterior cerebral artery, we have 2 middle cerebral artery. This is a branch of basilar artery. Okay, so we have two anterior cerebral artery because we have two and superolateral surface. This is a half of the brain, another half. We have two middle cerebral artery, two posterior cerebral artery. So the posterior cerebral artery supplies this part. This part is the occipital lobe, and this part is the inferior temporal gyrus. Inferior temporal gyrus. So inferior temporal gyrus is supplied by the posterior cerebral artery. So if we put the number here, that is 3 posterior cerebral artery. It supplies the occipital lobe plus inferior temporal gyrus. But superior temporal gyrus, middle temporal gyrus supplied by the middle cerebral artery. Okay, and parietal lobe, this area supplied by this is the intraparietal sulcus. This area supplied by the middle cerebral artery. This part is supplied by the middle cerebral artery. Only this is supplied by the anterior cerebral artery surface. Okay, this is the medial surface. We have the corpus callosum. Here is the corpus callosum here with the septum pellucidum. We have the fornix. Okay, so we got the medial surface. What is the blood supply? Again, blood supply. This is the anterior cerebral artery. Okay, we can make it 1. Okay, this is the anterior cerebral artery. I'm showing it here. This is the anterior cerebral artery. It passes over the corpus callosum in the callosal sulcus. Okay, so this is the anterior cerebral artery. And how about on the medial surface? We have below the corpus callosum, we have the area. This area is supplied by the posterior cerebral artery. Posterior cerebral artery, there is 3. This part is supplied by the middle cerebral artery. We got the medial surface, again anterior cerebral artery, posterior cerebral artery. Okay, and this is not shown in the model. This part is supplied by the middle cerebral artery. Okay, we got that. Now we'll go to the inferior surface. Okay, so we have done supralateral surface. We have done the medial surface. We go to the inferior surface. Okay, inferior surface. We have to find out that with the inferior surface, this part we have gone through inferior temporal gyrus area. Other than that, okay, is supplied, inferior temporal gyrus supplied by the posterior cerebral artery. Here, if we just compare that, it is from different cerebral hemisphere. This is the gyrus rectus. This part supplied by the anterior cerebral artery. This is the corpus. This is the olfactory bulb. Okay, you can write it here. This is the gyrus rectus. This is the olfactory bulb. Olfactory bulb and olfactory tract, olfactory stera in the olfactory sulcus. This area supplied by the anterior cerebral artery. Anterior cerebral artery. Lateral part on the orbital surface, on the undersurface of the brain, this part will be supplied by the middle cerebral artery. This is 2, this is 1, okay, and the most of the inferior surface that is formed by the temporal lobe of the brain, that is supplied by the inferior that is the inferior surface is supplied by the posterior cerebral artery. We got the blood supply of the brain. Again, the blood supply of the brain is covered by the circle of Willis. Circle of Willis is formed by the internal carotid artery, and the vertebral artery forming the basilar artery is split into posterior cerebral artery. Internal carotid artery will be divided into the anterior cerebral artery and the middle cerebral artery. The internal carotid artery is connected to the posterior cerebral artery by posterior communicating artery. Anterior cerebral artery are connected by the anterior communicating artery. Then we got the supralateral surface. This part supplied by the anterior cerebral artery. This is supplied by the middle cerebral artery. This is supplied by the posterior cerebral artery. Again, on the medial surface of the brain, this is supplied by the anterior cerebral artery. This is a corpus callosum with the thalamus here. We have the septum pellucidum here. Okay, here we are getting the blood supply from the posterior cerebral artery. This is the anterior cerebral artery. On the under surface of the brain, anteriorly, if you look at that, this is the orbital surface. It is supplied by on the lateral aspect by the middle cerebral artery, medial aspect anterior cerebral artery. Okay, the temporal pole area supplied by the middle cerebral artery, but the rest of the part is supplied by the posterior cerebral artery. We got the blood supply of the brain. Now we'll go to the blood supply of the cerebellum. Okay, so far we have covered the blood supply of the cerebrum. This is cerebrum, this is cerebellum. Now we'll discuss about blood supply of the cerebellum. This is cerebellum. What is the contribution? Blood supply of the cerebellum is done by the superior cerebellar artery, and this is a branch of basilar artery. We know that basilar artery is formed by the union of two vertebral arteries. We have the anterior inferior cerebellar artery, anterior inferior cerebellar artery, that is a branch of the basilar artery. We know that a branch of basilar artery. Okay, we got that. So we'll get the posterior inferior cerebellar artery, posterior inferior cerebellar artery. We have two here, anterior inferior, posterior inferior cerebellar artery, superior cerebellar artery, have two. This is a branch of vertebral artery. got the blood supply of the cerebellum. Now we'll go to the blood supply of the midbrain. Blood supply of the midbrain. Blood supply of the midbrain is carried out by the perforating branches of the circle of Willis. Perforating branches of the circle of Willis. Okay. Then we'll go to the blood supply of the pons. Pons is supplied by the basilar branches of the basilar arteries. Branches of the basilar arteries. Okay. We call it pontine branches of the basilar artery that supplies the pons. This is the pons. Pons is supplied by the pontine branches of the basilar artery. Okay. Then we'll go to the blood supply of the medulla oblongata. Blood supply medulla oblongata is carried out by multiple arteries, like that of the vertebral arteries, upper part of the vertebral arteries. Vertebral arteries are branches of the subclavian artery. Also, it will get the medulla oblongata also get blood supply from the lower part of the basilar artery, lower part of the basilar artery, We have only one basilar artery. We have two vertebral arteries. Okay, we got the blood supply of the medulla oblongata. It will also get contribution from anterior spinal artery, and posterior spinal arteries. We got the blood supply of the cerebrum, blood supply of the cerebellum, blood supply of the midbrain, blood supply of the medulla oblongata. Now, what is the blood supply inside the brain? Blood supply of the thalamus, hypothalamus, and the basal ganglia. Okay, blood supply of the thalamus, hypothalamus, and basal ganglia. Okay, they are getting blood supply from the perforating branches, perforating or penetrating, we can call central branches of the circle of Willis. As for example, the lenticulate nucleus and corpus stratum are getting blood supply from the anterolateral perforating or central branches of the, we call it lenticulostriate branches of the circle of Willis. Okay, from the middle cerebral artery. Okay, circle of Willis along the middle cerebral artery. Okay, thalamus is present here. It also get blood supply from posterior cerebral artery, part of it, from the middle cerebral artery, from the anterior cerebral artery. Corpus callosum get its blood supply from the anterior cerebral artery. So that's all about the blood supply of the brain and brainstem. If you like my video, please support my channel and subscribe me. Please share the information with your friends and have a nice day. Bye now.